In a South Bronx alley, there is a structure built from contractor bags, scraps of cardboard, and foam insulation panels pulled out of the trash. It has been standing for over 12 years. It has stood through 12 winters, 12 seasons of sleet, freezing rain, and wind off the Harlem River that drops the real feel into single digits by 2 in the morning. 12 years of city workers walking past it, 12 years of people pointing, and 12 years of that shelter standing exactly where Marcus put it. Dry on the inside, structurally intact, built from materials everyone else stepped over on the way to their cars. Marcus was unhoused. He had no engineering degree. He had no budget except what he could save from day labor. When his neighbors on that block first noticed what he was building, they saw a wire shelving frame lashed together with zip tie strips, cardboard layered 3 sheets deep across the floor, rigid foam panels pulled from a construction dumpster, and row after row of inflated contractor bags covering the outside walls like scales on a fish. They thought the wind would flatten the whole thing by morning. It didn't. What Marcus built through 2 winters of trial, observation, and adjustment was a near-perfect application of 3 thermal principles that go back several thousand years. Principles that predate every outdoor gear brand in existence. Principles that the modern industry has largely replaced with proprietary materials, brand names, and a product language designed to make simple physics sound like something only a manufacturer can deliver. This video is a return to those principles. Not improvised versus commercial, not cheap versus expensive, just the actual mechanisms of heat retention, how they work, why they work, and what it looks like when any system, store-bought or hand-built, works with them or against them. Once you understand these 3 principles clearly, you can look at any sleeping bag, any shelter, any emergency kit, and immediately understand where it will perform and where it will break down. You will know what questions to ask before you spend money, and you will know how to supplement whatever you already have, starting tonight, for almost nothing. Let's start with the most fundamental force in thermal insulation. The most powerful insulating force in nature is not a material. It is stillness. Specifically, it is trapped, motionless air. Air itself is a genuinely poor conductor of heat. Left undisturbed, it does not transfer warmth away from your body. It just sits there. The problem begins the moment air starts moving. When convection happens, when wind contacts your skin, when a cold draft circulates through a shelter and carries your body heat away with every pass. Movement is what makes cold air dangerous. Stillness is what makes insulation work. This is the foundational principle behind every major insulating material ever developed. Goose down, sheep's wool, fiberglass batting, aerogel, every single one of them works for exactly one reason. They trap air. They hold it motionless in tiny sealed pockets. They deny heat any pathway of escape by eliminating the convection that would allow it to move. When Marcus inflated those black contractor bags and lashed them in overlapping rows to the outside of his wire frame, layered like roof shingles, one row over the next, he was creating dozens of sealed air chambers. Each bag held a volume of still air that could not convect, could not be driven by wind, and could not dissipate. By layering them in 2 rows with a deliberate gap between, he built a redundant system. If the outer bags were torn or punctured, the inner row still held. The dead air still had nowhere to go. A useful way to picture this is to think of a double-pane window. The glass itself is not what insulates your house. It is the sealed air gap between the 2 panes. That gap, that trapped stillness, is where the thermal performance actually lives. Now apply that same test to a modern sleeping bag under real field conditions. A bag rated to -20 degrees achieves that rating in a testing environment, fully lofted, lying flat, under controlled conditions. The moment you lie down inside it and press your body against the ground, the fill beneath you compresses. The air pockets collapse under your own weight, precisely where you need insulation most, and that section of the bag effectively stops working. Add moisture and the problem accelerates. Damp synthetic fibers clump and lose their ability to spring back to loft, turning an expensive insulated bag into a dense, heat-conducting shell. The performance decline is not gradual, it is sharp. Marcus's inflated bags, lashed to a rigid frame, maintained their air pockets under sustained pressure. They could not compress the way fiber fill can. They could not clump. The air inside them was not embedded in fibers that could become saturated. It was sealed in a plastic envelope. The physics did not change with the weather. Dead air, trapped and protected, that is the first layer. This is the mechanism most people overlook, and the one most responsible for genuine cold weather danger. Your body produces moisture constantly, even in extreme cold. You sweat and you breathe. Every exhale releases warm, water-saturated air into your immediate environment. In a sealed or poorly ventilated shelter, that moisture accumulates. It condenses on your clothing, on your sleeping surface, and on the inner walls of any enclosed space. And wet insulation is not merely less effective, it actively works against you. Water conducts heat away from your body at roughly 25 times the rate of still air. A damp sleeping bag doesn't just fail to retain warmth. It pulls warmth out of you throughout the night. The insulation you started with has inverted. It is now accelerating heat loss instead of preventing it. In serious cold over a long night, that distinction matters enormously. Marcus discovered this the hard way during his first 2 winters. His initial structure was decent at stopping wind and retaining heat in the short term, but he kept waking up colder as the night wore on. Not dramatically, just a consistent, progressive decline. He started paying close attention to where the moisture was going. He noticed condensation on his walls. He noticed his bedding was slightly damp by morning, despite no rain, no precipitation of any kind. And through 2 winters of observation, he arrived at a solution that cost nothing. He left a gap, a deliberate 2-inch opening along the base of his outer wall, not wide enough to allow meaningful wind entry, just wide enough to allow warm, moisture-heavy interior air to drift out by natural convection, replaced by drier outside air that was gently warmed as it entered at floor level. The gap sat below his sleeping surface, so it never created a draft against his body. What it created was a slow, continuous exchange. Moisture out, dryness maintained. Building scientists call this a passive vapor management system. Marcus called it leaving a little room. He arrived at it by observation, not calculation, and it kept the interior of his shelter dry through conditions that turned commercially produced tents into condensation traps before midnight. Compare that to the typical modern tent. Contemporary tent design prioritizes water resistance at the outer surface and treats internal moisture as a secondary problem, theoretically solved by double wall construction and mesh inner panels. The outer fly is waterproof. The inner canopy is meant to breathe. Moisture vapor is supposed to migrate outward through the gap between them. In practice, under sustained cold weather use, that gap is too narrow to provide meaningful vapor exchange. The moisture condenses in the gap itself and runs down into the seams. Everything inside ends up damp. By morning, you are inside a wet synthetic envelope and have no clear idea what went wrong. Nothing went wrong. The design simply prioritized keeping weather out over letting moisture out, and in extended cold, that trade-off costs you warmth, gear life, and a night of actual rest. If you have ever woken up inside a tent on a completely clear night and found everything slightly wet, this is why. Not the weather, the physics. Vapor management, the deliberate, engineered movement of interior moisture out of your sleeping environment, is the second layer. The earth beneath you is a heat sink of effectively infinite capacity. That sentence deserves a moment. The ground is massive. It maintains a stable temperature regardless of what your body produces, and when you make direct contact with it, it will absorb your warmth continuously, steadily and silently, without wind, without rain, without any dramatic signal that it is happening. It simply draws heat, and it does not stop until the night ends. This is the most consistently underestimated heat drain in cold weather survival. People focus on wind, they focus on precipitation. The ground gets treated as a secondary concern, addressed by a foam sleeping pad that gradually compresses under body weight and loses much of its thermal resistance over the course of a long night. The ground wins. In serious cold, it almost always wins. Marcus understood this instinctively because he had slept on bare concrete and on layered materials across multiple seasons, and he knew exactly what the difference felt like in his body. He addressed the floor first before any other element of the build. 3 to 4 sheets of flat cardboard laid base down, fully covering the footprint of the shelter. Rigid foam panels on top of that. Cardboard is a dramatically underappreciated insulating material. Its paper fiber matrix traps air at a microscopic level, the same mechanism that makes foam panels work, operating at a finer scale. It does not compress the way foam does under sustained body weight. It also breathes slightly, which supports the vapor management system at floor level rather than working against it. And for Marcus, it was free, pulled from appliance stores and furniture outlets within 6 blocks. The rigid foam panels above the cardboard addressed ground conduction at a higher level of resistance. 2-inch thick foam board, the kind used in commercial building insulation, cuts thermal transfer through the floor almost entirely. It does not compress. It does not absorb moisture. It creates a continuous, stable barrier between your sleeping surface and the Earth's thermal draw. Think about the difference between sleeping on a concrete slab and sleeping on a platform layered with several inches of dense wool. Same outdoor temperature, same clothing. The person on the concrete is dangerously cold by morning. The person on the layered platform is fine. The only variable is ground conduction. Nothing else changed. That is what Marcus addressed systematically with materials he found for free. And it is what most sleeping pad systems, once their foam compresses under body weight through a long, cold night, gradually stop addressing by hour 3 or 4. Floor insulation, continuous, under every inch of your sleeping surface. That is the third layer. Dead air retention, vapor management, ground insulation. These 3 principles form a complete framework for evaluating any cold weather system, not just improvised shelters. Any sleeping bag, any tent, any layering setup, any emergency kit. A sleeping bag fails the dead air test the moment its fill compresses under body weight. A tent fails the vapor test the moment it seals interior moisture in. A sleeping pad fails the ground test the moment its foam loses loft under sustained pressure. Understanding this tells you exactly where any product's weakness is before you are in the field. It also tells you what to ask before you buy. Does this bag's shell allow moisture vapor to migrate outward? Does this tent's double wall design actually create a vapor escape path, or just an appearance of one? Does this sleeping pad maintain meaningful loft under a person's full body weight across 8 hours? These questions matter more than temperature ratings. Temperature ratings are laboratory results under ideal conditions. They exclude the failure modes, compression, moisture accumulation, that occur in the field every time. And understanding the framework tells you how to supplement whatever you already have. 3 ways to apply these principles directly. Starting from simplest. Option 1, $20, 10 minutes. Buy a box of heavy-duty contractor bags, 42-gallon, 3mm construction grade, the thick ones designed for demolition debris and heavy construction waste. Keep them in your car, your pack, your emergency kit. A single contractor bag worn as a poncho over your existing layers immediately eliminates wind penetration and traps a layer of dead air against your body. In sustained wind, this outperforms most emergency foil blankets because foil blankets fail the moment they are creased, and they provide almost no dead air insulation on their own. They are designed to reflect radiant heat, which is not your primary heat loss mechanism in wind. The contractor bag addresses convection directly. Sealed, still air against your body. 2 bags worn with a deliberate pinched gap at the shoulders. One bag against your clothing and one bag over it with airspace between create a crude but genuine double wall dead air system. The gap is the insulation. The bags do not need to be inflated. They just need separation. That is all the principle requires. Option 2. Full system logic applied to any shelter. Start with the floor. Use rigid foam board, 2 inches thick, from any hardware store, roughly 30 cents per square foot, laid flat across your entire sleeping footprint before any pad or sleeping surface goes down. Put cardboard beneath that if available. This combination cuts ground conduction almost completely. Then create 2 walls of separation between inside air and outside air, with a gap between them wherever the structure allows. Rig a second tarp 6 inches outside the first tarp with no contact points. That doubles thermal performance without significant added weight. The gap holds still air. That still air is your insulation. Leave a 2-inch vapor gap at the lowest point of one wall. Test it with your hand on a cold night. You should feel no draft, just the faintest, barely perceptible slow movement of air. That movement is your shelter breathing. It maintains dryness over a full night, and that keeps every other element of your insulation system performing the way it is supposed to. Option 3. One question for any purchase. Does this product allow moisture vapor to escape from the interior, or does it seal everything in? Any fully sealed system, regardless of fill rating, brand, price, or marketing language, will eventually trap moisture and begin accelerating heat loss instead of preventing it. Breathability matters. Ventilation design matters. If a product's materials cannot clearly explain how they manage the moisture your body generates overnight, treat that product as gear designed for short use in controlled conditions, not sustained cold weather performance. Buy for the failure mode, not the rating. Marcus wasn't an engineer. He didn't have a gear catalog, a tested protocol, or any formal background in thermal science. He had attention, he had time, and he had materials that everyone around him treated as garbage. What he built through 2 winters of observation and a decade of refinement was a near-perfect expression of 3 principles that predate every synthetic material ever put into a sleeping bag. Dead air, moisture out, ground cut off. These aren't secrets, they're not proprietary. They belong to anyone who needs to understand warmth and is willing to look at the physics rather than the branding. That's what this channel is for. Not gear reviews, not brand comparisons. The actual mechanics of heat retention, shelter performance, and cold weather survival, explained clearly enough that you can evaluate any system against the same standard, whether you built it yourself or pulled it off a shelf. Marcus knew what heat retention required. On the coldest nights in the South Bronx, his shelter was the warmest place on that block. Subscribe for more deep dives into cold weather science and survival engineering. And drop a comment, which piece of outdoor gear do you most want us to put through this framework? We are building the list now.